Teddy Daniels, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Chuck All, Mark Ruffalo, of the United States Marshals Service are on a ship in gloomy Boston Harbor bound for Shutter Island, a federal mental facility for the criminally ill. They are traveling to the island because a female patient named Rachel escaped the previous day. Teddy is sick, sweating and puking in the toilet, telling himself to calm down, it's just water. Then he looks out the window and declares that there is a lot of water. He goes up on deck to speak with Chuck, and it's clear that they're new partners working together for the first time. Teddy's wife perished in a flat fire several years ago, it is disclosed during their talk. Chuck regrets bringing it up. He refers to Teddy as boss throughout the film, and at one point references Teddy as a legend, so we know Teddy is well known inside the Marshal Service and is Chuck's superior. When they arrive to the island, the ferry captain warns them that a major storm is on its way. Teddy and Chuck encounter McPherson, the deputy warden, who leads them into the mental hospital grounds. Although there are high fences and electrified wire around the outside, the actual buildings and grounds resemble a college campus. There is the A building, which houses the male patients, the B building, which houses the female patients, and the C building, which is located on the highest point of the island and is said to be a Civil War fortress. It holds the most dangerous cases, and the marshals are instructed not to go there alone without McPherson and Dr. Colley, Ben Kingsley, accompanying them. When Deputy Warden McPherson orders them to hand over their firearms, they have a brief argument. Teddy claims that they are federal agents, but McPherson argues that federal penitentiary legislation takes precedence and that they will not be let in the gates with their firearms. They reluctantly hand them over, with Chuck pulling his holster from his jeans somewhat clumsily, earning him a frown from McPherson and Teddy. They meet Dr. Colley, who gives them an overview of the facility and psychiatry. According to Dr. Colley, there is a battle going on in psychiatry, with one party believing in surgical treatments such as lobotomies to heal patients, and the other side believing that new psychotropic medicines are the way to treat individuals. He feels that sometimes simply listening to a patient and gently making their life more comfortable is the best course of action. Teddy still has a severe headache from the boat ride, so the doctor offers him some water and what he claims are aspirin pills. He tells that a patient, Rachel, escaped the night before but that it's impossible because she seemed to have simply vanished through the walls. She's on Shutter Island because she drowned 3 of her children one by one and then pretended they didn't die. In fact, she believes she is still at the hospital and that all of the employees and other convicts are just neighbors or deliverymen she encounters on a daily basis. She refuses to believe she has killed anyone or that her children have died. They take a tour of the rest of the island, where officers are looking for Rachel. Teddy is skeptical of the lighthouse on the other side of the island, which is fenced and guarded by armed guards. Teddy makes it clear that his role is to conduct interviews with both staff and patients. He explains he needs the staff personnel documents, but the doctor dismisses him. They walk to the patient living quarters and question the personnel about Rachel's departure. There is a loose floorboard in her cell and a scribbled message from her that says, "The Law of 4. Who is 67? The staff are less than helpful when Teddy and Chuck question about her at the meeting, but they do note that she had attended group therapy shortly before she went to her room and disappeared. During the meeting, it is revealed that she has a staff physician, Dr. Shaheen, who conducted the meeting. When Teddy asks where he is, Dr. Colley claims he just left on the ferry that morning for a long-planned vacation. Teddy is perplexed that a hazardous mental patient has recently escaped, that there is a lockdown, and that her doctor is free to leave on vacation. At this point, everything appears suspect. There are intermittent dream sequences, flashbacks concerning Teddy's time as a soldier in World War II, and Teddy frequently has internal discussions with himself in which his deceased wife, Dolores, Michelle Williams, appears to him and provides him guidance. Teddy's battalion is the first to liberate the Dachau concentration camp in one flashback. There are a lot of dead Jews. Teddy is particularly struck by a dead woman holding her dead daughter in the midst of a pile of dead bodies. Teddy recalls seeing the German camp commander try suicide by shooting himself in the side of the face, but he only hurts himself. The German reaches for his gun to do the job, but Teddy carefully moves the gun away with his foot just out of the German's grasp, watching him suffer before he bleeds to death. In other dreams, his wife discovers that he has a large number of empty bottles of alcohol concealed throughout the house. He admits that he drinks so much because of what he witnessed in Germany. Following the staff meeting, Dr. Colley invites Teddy and Chuck to his island estate for a cigar and something to drink. Dr. Naring, Max von Sydow, is in the den when they arrive, and he appears to be Dr. Colley's boss. Teddy dislikes him right once when he notices a faint German accent, and the two quarrel verbally for a while. Dr. Naring laughs as he remarks on Teddy's remarkable defense mechanisms. Dr. Naring refers to Teddy and Chuck as men of violence, which irritates Chuck. However, the doctor clarifies that he does not imply that they are violent guys, but rather that they have witnessed violence and are not afraid to use it if necessary. He rightly deduces that they both served in the army during World War II and were not bred to be afraid of violence. Teddy becomes enraged when they announce they've consulted the board of directors, who have refused to divulge the staff's personnel records, and rushes off in a rage. The storm has slammed the island the next day, and it is evident that the ferry will not arrive. Teddy was merely bluffing the night before because he had no intention of leaving without further exploring the island. Teddy and Chuck conduct many interviews with the patients who participated in Rachel's group therapy session. They are unhelpful, and they all appear to be reading from a script because they say identical things in their interviews. In one interview, a woman requests a drink of water from Chuck, and after he departs, she steals Teddy's notebook, writes something quickly, and hands it back to him. He and Chuck leave the hospital grounds and wander around the island, eventually arriving at the cemetery. As the wind and rain build up, they seek refuge in a burial vault. Chuck asks Teddy to be honest with him. He believes the previous patient told him something when he was getting her water, and Teddy finally hands him the diary, which says run. Teddy ultimately admits that he has been attempting for some time to be assigned to an investigation of the mental facility. He claims that Letties, a maintenance worker at the flat where they lived, was the arsonist who started the fire that murdered his wife. He got away on a technicality, but was apprehended later when he killed some more people. He was admitted to the local psychiatric hospital. When Teddy looked into it, he discovered that there was no paperwork for Letties, and he feels that there is a larger plot at work. He brings up the Nazi experiments and asks if his own government is also involved in psychotropic medication research. He informs Chuck that he came across a prisoner named George Noyce who was actually put here some time ago and was the one who first alerted Teddy to the fact that there was some strange study going on here. Chuck becomes suspicious that Teddy's prowling around alerted the wrong people to his interest in Shutter Island, and that they contrived Rachel's abduction as an excuse to pull him here as a marshal to investigate where they could make both of them disappear. Teddy is skeptical, but Chuck seems convinced, and then the door bursts open and a car flashlight shines on them from DEP Warden McPherson's vehicle. He's been hunting for them, and when they arrive, he drives them back to the hospital. They change out of their wet business suits, and the orderly gives them staff white uniforms that nearly make them look like patients, and he informs them it will be a day or two before they get their suits back. They dislike whites but accept them anyhow. The orderly claims that their cigarettes were damaged. They both smoke heavily, but he gives them 2 new packs of cigarettes. They meet again in Dr. Colley's office. Teddy becomes unwell with a migraine after they briefly quarrel about the investigation. He thinks he'll be fine, but suddenly he falls and Chuck catches him. Teddy refuses to take the medications that the doctor has given him. But he's terribly unwell, and the doctor virtually forces him to take them, which he does. Chuck leads him and the rest of the team down to the basement to wait out the hurricane-like storm. Just before falling asleep, he notices a sinister-looking man, whom an orderly identifies as the warden. Ted Levine, the killer from Silence of the Lambs. The warden sneers at Teddy just before he falls asleep. Teddy has another dream scene in which his wife informs him that Rachel is on the island and that he must assist her. Teddy is in Dr. Colley's lair in a dream, while Letty's, Elias Koteas, is in his chair by the fire. Letty's has a horrible scar from his right eye to the left side of his chin, and his left eye is milky white. The following day is somewhat chaotic. Because the backup generators failed, all of the patient's cell doors were opened. Trees have fallen throughout the hospital grounds, and employees and officers are attempting to clean up as well as gather all of the wandering patients. Teddy and Chuck take advantage of the situation by going up to C building while no one is looking. The interior is really dark, and they roam around. They pursue a patient who runs away from them. Chuck slips behind, and the patient grabs and chokes Teddy from behind. Teddy flees and beats the snot out of him until Chuck drags him away. A guard chews Teddy out and has Chuck assist him in transporting the patient to the medical center, asking Teddy to go for a stroll and cool off. Teddy travels about and comes across a row of cells with a prisoner sitting alone and reciting the name Letty's. Teddy realizes it is George Noyce, a former patient here who told him about what was going on at Shutter Island, as he demands the prisoner look at him. Noyce's face is battered. Teddy can't believe he's back here, and Noyce is ranting at him about how it's all about Letty's. He advises Teddy that the only way he can save Noyce is to forget about his wife and Letty's and concentrate on what is happening here. Teddy seems guilty when Noyce tells him that it is his fault that Noyce has returned because he keeps asking about Letty's. Teddy swears he'll get Noyce out of there. Noyce informs him that Letty's is no longer in C building, but has been transferred to the lighthouse, where he will undergo a lobotomy. He claims that the lighthouse is where they conduct most of their tests on troublemakers. Noyce interrogates him about Noyce, hinting that he is a government stooge sent to pursue Teddy. He asks if he's ever worked with Chuck before, and we know they haven't because they told us so at the start. Teddy finally catches up with Chuck, and the two of them make their way to the workplace. According to Dr. Colley, they discovered Rachel. Emily Mortimer. They go to her cell, and there is a strange sequence in which Teddy tries to communicate to her, and she eventually believes he is her dead husband and begins yelling at him. Teddy's dream sequences now involve Rachel as the mom with her daughter in the Dachau mass grave. They open their eyes and stare at him this time. The girl inquires as to why he did not save her. He claims he attempted, but the soldiers did not arrive in time. Rachel is covered in blood in another scene, but she is at Teddy and his wife's vacation house. When they go outdoors, Teddy notices the little girl and takes her up to carry her to the water. When the small girl asks him why he didn't save her, he seems heartbroken. Teddy and Chuck leave, and Chuck claims to have found Letty's file, but it only included his commitment paper, which he tries to show Teddy, but he refuses to look at it since he is focused on reaching the lighthouse. When Teddy tries to convince Chuck out of going to the lighthouse, he comes across as suspicious. They arrive at the coastal cliffs and realize they are too far south of the lighthouse. Teddy says he'll go around and try to get there another way. Chuck attempts to talk him out of it even more, saying it's unsafe to scale the cliffs when it'll be dark soon. They quarrel some more, and Teddy decides to go by himself. Teddy comes close to the lighthouse but discovers that the tide has shut the lighthouse off from the island. He gives up and returns to Chuck, telling him they'll try again later. But all he sees is a smoking cigarette on the cliff's edge, approximately 100 feet down to the rocks below. He looks over and finds Chuck at the bottom of the cliff, surrounded by pounding waves. Teddy, shocked, climbs down the cliff, but he doesn't see Chuck at the bottom. He notices a cave on the cliff side with a fire burning inside. When he arrives at the cave, he encounters a woman armed with a knife. They start conversing, and she explains her name is Rachel, Patricia Clarkson, but she was a doctor at the hospital who found out too much, so they committed her and made up a narrative about her killing her children. The other Rachel must be a ruse created to dupe Teddy and Chuck. She claims that the government is testing a lot of different medications on the patients in order to create super spies or warriors who don't feel pain and don't have memories that can be tortured out of them if they are captured. She then threatens Teddy that he will not be allowed to go. They'll make up a narrative about him becoming insane. She asks him if he has been through a traumatic event, his wife's death, and warns that they will use this to claim that he cracked. She inquires if he has taken any medication. He has, the aspirin for his headaches. She inquires whether he has eaten at the hospital or smoked any of their cigarettes. The orderly gave him a new pack when his clothes were all wet. She claims that psychotropic medicines take 36 to 48 hours to take action and make him pliable to control. Tremors in his hands, which he already has, will be the first sign. She also doubts Chuck's status as a marshal, believing he is merely a government spy dispatched to accompany him to the island. When Teddy returns to the road, he notices a jeep drive up alongside the warden. The warden returns him to the institution, where they have an odd talk about being men of violence. The warden informs him that men like them know how to use violence effectively. He wonders if Teddy would be able to stop him if he reached over and tried to bite his eye out. "Why don't you try and find out?" Teddy suggests. The warden smiles and adds, "That's the Teddy I was hoping for." Teddy is on his way to confront Dr. Colley. Dr. Colley is curious about Teddy's whereabouts. Teddy informs the doctor that he will be going and inquires whether the doctor has seen Chuck, his companion. Dr. Colley claims he came to the island alone, without a partner. Teddy notices that they are already putting their plan into action by insisting on the absence of Chuck. He walks around the grounds, trying to figure out what to do next. He sees his wife, who tells him not to go to the lighthouse and to leave the island. She claims the lighthouse will kill him. He intends to blow up Dr. Colley's car in order to create a distraction and slip down to the lighthouse. He takes his suit tie, soaks it in gas from the gas tank and fires it. As he walks away from the car, he notices his wife and the small daughter standing in front of it. It explodes all around them, but they are not burned. He dashes out of there in order to reach the lighthouse. He swims over to it, sneaks up behind a guard, overwhelms him, and steals his rifle. The guard asks whether he intends to kill him, and he responds no before hitting him with the rifle buttocks and knocking him out. He rushes up the lighthouse's stairs to the top, inspecting each level but discovering no operating rooms for medical experimentation. He reaches the top and discovers Dr. Colley sitting behind a desk. Teddy is chatting while holding the weapon. The doctor informs him that there are no bullets in the weapon and inquires as to whether he killed the guard downstairs. Teddy says no, but the doctor orders that the people downstairs attend to the guard before they come up. Teddy first notices his gun on the doctor's desk near the opening of the film. Dr. Colley informs Teddy that he has been a patient at the hospital for the past 2 years. Teddy does not believe him and claims to be a U.S. Marshal. According to the doctor, he was one, but following his breakdown 2 years ago, he was put here. When his children were killed, he broke down. Teddy claims he has no children. Dr. Colley claims that they have been attempting to help him with the new medicine therapy and have done everything they could to treat him. Dr. Colley informs him that he has been one of their most dangerous patients and that some people want to lobotomize him to make him more manageable. The last few days had been a major role-playing effort to get him to finally realize the truth. He summons Dr. Sheehan, the doctor who went on vacation shortly after his patient Rachel vanished. The door swings open, and it is Chuck. He is a doctor who agreed to play along with Teddy's fantasy while keeping an eye on him. Dr. Colley informs Teddy that his real name is Letty's and shows him on a whiteboard that his full name and Letty's full name are an anagram, that is, all of the letters in his name can be rearranged to make Letty's full name. The same goes for his wife's and Rachel's names. Teddy created the new identity Teddy Daniels to remove himself from his original name. The doctor explains that Noyce was a fellow patient that Teddy had attacked a few days ago, which is why he looked so battered. Teddy disputes this, but the doctor provides him a transcript of what Noyce said to him earlier in the cell, in which he said it was all Teddy's fault. He tells Teddy that he beat up Noyce because Noyce called him by his real name. Teddy takes his rifle from the table and shoots Dr. Colley, whose blood runs down the wall. There is no blood the next second. Dr. Colley informs him that his gun was a toy gun given to him when the role-playing began. He informs Teddy that he has fully erased all of his mistakes in an attempt to make himself the hero. We finally get a flashback in which Teddy/Letty's returns to his cottage after hunting bad men in Oklahoma for a week or two. His wife, Michelle Williams, is behaving oddly. He inquires as to where the children are, and she responds that they are at school. He says it's Saturday, and she smiles and points to the lake, saying, "They're in her school." Teddy is terrified as he hurries down to the lake and sees his 3 children face down in the water. He gathers them all up, sobbing uncontrollably, and throws them to the ground. Then his wife hugs him and suggests they sit down to eat with the kids at the dining room table. Teddy is crying and begs her to stop talking if she ever loved him. She is now depressed and swears she loves him before being shot. Teddy glances down, realizing he had just shot his wife. She dies while laying there with a lot of blood on her. Teddy now realizes that he must either accept his truth or continue to reject it. The doctor makes it plain that if he cannot accept the truth, Dr. Colley will be powerless to prevent the other doctors from ordering his lobotomy. Teddy is forced to admit that he blames himself for not noticing his wife's problems earlier. That he feels guilty for his children's deaths since he failed to seek her help when she needed it. He built a fantasy universe in which he never killed his wife and never suffered a nervous breakdown. He and Chuck, Dr. Shaheen, are seated on some steps near the hospital the next day. He asks Chuck what their next step is, as if he still thinks he's investigating the hospital as a U.S. Marshal, and Chuck responds, "What do you think, boss?" Chuck nods to the other doctors on the other side of the hospital, who then directs several orderlies to proceed towards Teddy. Teddy asks Chuck if it is preferable to live as a monster or to die a good guy. He stands up and cheerfully follows the orderlies, preferring to continue his fantasy than then face the horrors of his reality. Alternatively, he has accepted his reality but is unable to live with its horrors. As a result, towards the end of the film, he is acting out the vision rather than living it. He is effectively cured. However, he still can't live with his memories, so he willfully pressures the physicians to make the decision for physical intervention, i.e. the lobotomy, knowing he won't have to live with his recollections as a compliant zombie. As a result, he died as a good guy, as contrary in the book, where the author ended the book with him still as Teddy.